Hi, this is Greg from Business Automated, and today I will show you how to upload credit notes from Xero to Airtable in PDF format. Let's get going. Alright, so the first step will be to get a credit note. So for example, here you have a credit note that you would like to upload to your Airtable in an attachment format with additional information. But the core thing is, how can we get this credit note as a PDF without having it to download it here? So for that, we'll be using make.com Integromat, and you can find link to Make in the description of this video with more information. The first step we will do is to start a new scenario. When you start a new scenario, what we're going to use here is a Xero module. There is a pre-built Xero module over here, so it will help us to connect with Xero and download the information that we need. You can see it is by default possible to download sales invoice as PDF, but when we look for credit notes, there is no option to get PDF of credit note. But worry not, we will have a workaround for that. So the scenario will be starting with watch credit notes, and this module will trigger every time there is a new credit note created or there is some sort of update happening to the credit note. So let's go back to the scenario over here. You will need to authenticate with Xero first and then select your organization. So once you do that, this module will react to every time there is some sort of change in the credit note. So let's run it now, so you can see nothing will happen, because since the moment we created it, there has been no changes in the credit notes. So now let's go back to the credit note and let's make an edit to the credit note. So we are doing an edit. We will adjust the quantity to and update. And now going back to make.com, once you press run once, you notice that there was actually a change in the credit note, which means this module will trigger. Okay, we all have all the information that we need about the credit note over here. So the next step will be basically making a second scenario that will allow us to download it. But before we move on to this download link and how to create the PDF download link for the credit note, we will first add the information that we want to Airtable. So the first module will be search records, and what we will search for here is whether the credit note with the ID already exists in our base. So we will just copy this one here. We select credit notes, and as a formula, if the name has spaces in between, you need to use curly brackets around it so that Airtable recognizes that this is formula field. The formula field is the same as the formula field that you would be using inside of Airtable, so you can use all the same formulas and tricks that you can use in Airtable. And now we will compare it against, we are putting this, that this means that this is a string of text. We are comparing this field against the credit note ID from here to see whether there was a credit note with that ID found over there. Okay, so now if we would run it, there won't be anything because we don't have anything. So as a next step, we're gonna use an upsert module. Upsert a record means something following. So you have the record ID here. If the record ID exists, the upsert module will update this given record. But if there is no record ID, so for example from the previous step here, Airtable search records, if this will be empty or non-existent, the upsert module will create a new record. So this way you can update existing ones or create new records. Okay, so now we will add a credit note number. So this is the human readable credit note number, and then we will add here the credit note ID. And here as an attachment, if we would like to add this as a PDF, we need to give a file URL. We don't have file URL from the Xero Watch Credit Notes, but this is the workaround that we'll build in a second. Okay, so let's save it here right now, and let's start building a download link for the credit notes. So for that, we will create a new scenario, and we will use webhook. Webhook module means make.com will give us a URL to which we can send information and also receive information back. So this will be a custom webhook. And now we need to create a new webhook with the name. Okay, so now we have this URL here. So I'll just copy it into the browser window, and you can see that now to this URL we will add following. We'll add a question mark, and we will type credit note ID equals and test. So let me just copy this whole thing here. I'm pressing it once so that make.com Integromat knows what will be the structure of the data. So you can see that we have successfully determined the structure of data that we will be sending to this webhook. Okay, and that means that now we can use Xero, and since we don't have a download PDF option for credit note, but that option exists within the Xero API, we will make a custom call to make API. There is a module called make an API call. Okay, and now what you will need over here is what is exactly the path of the API that you want to use, and in our case it will be 2.0 credit notes, and at the end after the slash we'll add credit note ID, which will be the ID of the credit note that we'll pass here to the webhook. And now the next step is the method is get. The headers are like here, but we need to add one more element. We will have to add one more header, which will tell the API what sort of response we expect in return. So we will say accept, and the value will be application PDF. All right, now we click OK. And what this will do, it will return the information about the PDF, but it will be in a binary format. So let's actually test it. So you can see here we have the credit note. Here on the top you have the credit note ID. You can copy this one here, and let's paste it here, and let's see what will happen. So let's run this one once. So this is now operational. Let's press enter. Nothing happened over here because we did not specify the webhook to provide us any return, and the error happened because we have specified wrong return type. Here we need to scroll down, and in the request type it's text, but response type is not JSON. The response type will be binary. Let's do it one more time. And you can see that we have received that PDF, but this is all in a binary format, which is not very useful, but we'll just quickly convert it into something that is useful using the webhook response. So here in the response for the webhook response, we will put exactly this body over here, but we will add one more trick, which is the custom header and the content type. And the content type is application PDF. This way, the browser or any other software accessing this endpoint will know that the return response is a PDF. Let's start this one more time, and let's see what happens when we press enter now. And we're getting the credit note as a PDF. So now this URL is basically a download link for our credit notes. So let's go back to the original scenario here, and when we have upsert record, now here instead of the file URL with the fixed credit note ID, we will change that ID to the ID of the credit note that we have from watch credit notes. Okay, and I could modify the credit note to trigger this one again, or I can select choose where to start and choose manually a specific credit note from the list of the past transactions. So I will actually use this one, which means the changes will start from here. So we will actually get 1, 2, 3 different credit notes created. So let's press run once. And actually nothing happened because I did not turn on this scenario over here. So let's delete the queue. Yes, those records in the queue will not help us. So this is working now. Let's save the changes. And now the scenario is ready. So let's try doing this again. So you can see that those records were actually created, but the return was a gibberish. So let's delete the attachments. Let's start maybe from the fourth one. Okay, and now we can see that the files are being returned. So you can see that the file here has been returned, and you can see that the credit note is being returned here properly. You can see that actually the ones that I have previously sent, they are still not showing correct, because there is something which is called API caching. So whenever you're making requests like that, those requests are being cached. The Airtable thinks that, oh, I have already accessed this endpoint and this is what it was already returning me. So let me use the same thing. There is a simple way, well, not necessarily simple, but there is a way how to override it. So we can add an additional parameter here. So for example, we have here one parameter which is credit note ID equals the credit note ID. And then if we want to have this fresh every time, so we can add and say time, which will not be used by make Integromat for anything, but it will look as a different URL. If it's a different URL, it will not be cached. So in this case, we can, for example, use timestamp. Okay, so now we can press OK, and let's choose where to start. Let's do the same, and let's run it one more time. And you can see that actually all of them have been updated with the new file, because the request that we were sending was including current timestamp. So every time this is being updated to a most current PDF. Okay, so now you could turn this one on to be scheduled at every 10 minutes, every 15 minutes, or you could just start it manually whenever you need to update the credit notes, and your credit notes here will be always up to date. All right, I hope this was useful for you guys, and please like and subscribe. Thank you, guys.